Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be talking about, well, guess what? The election results. It's not going to be a super long episode. We're going to fill you in on the final conclusions from one specific network, which is Decision Desk HQ. I have been holding off this entire time to wait for a final answer. I thought I may have to wait until the morning in order to get one. And I'm sure there will be contests. I'm sure there will be speculation about changes. And I'm watching, CNN is active on my TV right now, and they have not quite called it for Donald Trump yet. But Decision Desk has indeed come through. They have given him Maine's second, Nebraska's one, Nebraska's third. And out of the battleground states, including Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. They have given him Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, which means if this holds, he wouldn't even need Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, or Nevada. Michigan and Wisconsin are looking kind of red, which is interesting that he penetrated all three of those Rust Belt states. And Arizona seems to be leaning red. I still think there's room for it to go blue at this point, though the margin has actually increased. And Nevada is seeming to be more in his favor, which would have been the opposite of a prediction that I had given previously. But the point being that he has reached 270 by Decision Desk's metric. Currently, CNN still has him at 246 to Kamala Harris's 187. So obviously, I could be recording this and it just all be wrong as of tomorrow morning. I don't actually see that being the case. I think that this is going to stick as it was from about maybe 11:30 my time in Central, so 12:30 your time on Eastern. If you're in Eastern, at least. The Pennsylvania vote looked pretty locked in as Bucks County came in. It actually had flipped red as more votes were counted, and at that point, I had felt pretty confident saying that Pennsylvania was going to flip his way. Michigan and Wisconsin were late pullers for sure. Currently, Wisconsin sitting at 51.2% in his favor and 47.4% in her favor. Michigan is 50.6% in his favor with 47.5% in her favor. Arizona there's only a 0.8 difference. It's 50% Trump, 49.2% Kamala Harris. So that feels pretty viable to change with about only 56% counted. With 73% counted in Nevada, you're looking at 51% to 47.4%. Everything else went the way that you would probably predict. Massachusetts, your New York's, your Vermont's, New Hampshire's, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, even Virginia, even though it looked a little tight at the beginning, Virginia did indeed go the way of Harris, as well as New Mexico, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and California, Illinois, as well as it does look like Minnesota will be finishing in her camp with Hawaii. Everything else went to Donald Trump as of this point right now, except for the ones that are still in contention, or at least not fully called on Decision Desk HQ, which is not the end-all arbiter of everything, of course, but as of right now, Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. And while I have mixed opinions about the entire possibility of a second Trump presidency, you cannot deny the legendary status that will be incurred or will be imparted upon this man, as he is a president who has served out the full 8 years that a president is allowed, yet in two separate terms. That is quite legendary. There is no denying that, especially as a man who came out of nowhere, a media mogul who decided to finally take the stage again in 2016 after he had flirted with the Reform Party in 2000 and had come out of nowhere, being one of the most well-known political actors of my generation for sure, but even, I would say, going back through the millennials and even some of the Gen Xers, Hillary Clinton, and then being knocked out after COVID, having to deal with the pandemic, being knocked out by Joe Biden, one of the other more well-known figures who was the vice president of Obama, and having to go through an assassination attempt, and then having to face down the vice president from the person who beat him last time because the current president had stepped out of the race because of his inability to perform the job, or at least to run a campaign and perform the job. So it has been a tumultuous road to get to this point. There's no doubt about that. And whether or not you like Donald Trump, whether or not you think his policies are going to be great for the future of the nation, I do not think you can deny that this is a moment that has to be seriously contemplated as to why our nation is going in this direction. What does Trump speak to? Even, like I said, if you don't like his policies, and trust me, there are plenty of them, at least the proposed ones that I'm not necessarily looking forward to, they resonate with people. And if you're a Democrat, you need to take stock and understand where your candidate went wrong, what Donald Trump was saying that resonated with the average American, and you maybe need to pull yourself back in line with that. If you're a Republican and you don't necessarily like the direction Trump is taking it, you need to understand what he is telling the people and what's palatable to them, and then find a way to craft your message in order to get those people back to normal conservative values, because he does not just bring in the normal conservative. He brings in the middle of the road voter, the man and woman who are blue collar, who feel that they've been disenfranchised by the government. And I don't think that you will actually be able to change the trajectory of the Republican Party. The Republican Party has already been changed fundamentally, and it was going to continue on forward. But this is just another full-throated endorsement of that direction, especially with a J.D. Vance on the ticket. And if you're a Democrat, you need to understand why this populist moment is happening and what it actually speaks to, the derision or I don't want to say hatred, but the feeling of being abandoned that most people have when they think of politicians. That needs to be I think it needs to be fundamentally woven into your understanding of the American populace going forward, at least for now. So this is going to be an interesting new phase of the American story. And I want to put it out there. Again, I put it out there in a Twitter tirade. I put it out there in some of the previous conversations when talking about the assassination attempt, when talking about the Joe Biden coming and dropping out of the election. We cannot come into this situation, no matter how much you don't like it, and say, he's not my president. You can't come in and say that, hey, it's the end of the world, that this person is going to absolutely fundamentally destroy America. And I'm sure you can make arguments for those sort of things, but coming in with that mentality that those are the only viable options will only create havoc. They will only seed to the worst instincts of human beings. We are better than that. We are a nation that chooses our elected leader, or our leader, through a democratic/republic structure that allows everybody's voices to be heard with some moderating steps in order to make sure that the majority does not simply overrule the minority. And that, at this point, looking at the popular vote, Trump seems to be on top of that as well. Obviously, more reporting can be done. We're probably not going to have all the totals from California anytime soon, or at least not until the morning. But the point being that we are a civilized nation that has chosen a method of governance and a method of electing/putting in our leaders that is fundamentally hard. We have to have a lot of trust in one another, in the system, even in our own ability to judge the values and the principles of the people we put into office. And any attempt to actively degrade that confidence in one another and in yourself and in the others around you, while you can give good reasoning for it, you cannot do it in malice, you cannot do it in anger, because the repercussions can be worse. And you may not necessarily truly mean what you say because you are acting in a moment of irrationality while possibly chipping away at other people's faith in the system. And that doesn't mean you have to fully endorse the system. That doesn't mean you don't have to reform the system. That doesn't mean you don't acknowledge the problems with the system in order to endorse it. But you have to do it in a moment where you are devoid of the anger, frustration, sadness that will cause you to make terrible decisions and rip at the fabric of America in a way that may not be repairable. We are united. We are a people. Whether it is Kamala Harris that is leading us, or it is Donald Trump that is leading us, whether it is Joe Biden that is leading us, whether it is Bush that is leading us, whether it's Obama, whether it's Clinton, whether it's Reagan, it's Nixon to FDR. At the end of the day, they are our president. They don't define us, we define them. And you may be saying, oh, well, that doesn't necessarily always hold true. And I understand why you could think that, because they choose policy, they direct the people, they actually lead. But at the end of the day, we are a united body. We are the American people. And that president represents all of us, every single one. On the world stage, domestically, they may fight for certain issues that resonate with certain people, but if you go beyond our borders and beyond their policy proposals here, they represent every single one of us overseas. So we have to be civil about it. We have to take the time to truly appreciate the system that we have, even if we don't necessarily like the results. And we have to look at each other as brothers. We have to look at each other as fellow citizens. We have to look at each other with the respect that every single person who is put on this earth by God, you need to look at them with that respect that everybody deserves. So with that said, the results obviously could very well change. Right now, I'm not seeing much movement from the decision desk. CNN is still sitting at the same thing with what it appears to be Anderson Cooper, Van Jones. So we'll see. In the morning, there may be a different result. But as of right now, it does indeed look like Donald J. Trump will be the 47th president of the United States of America. So with that said, thank you for joining me for this episode of the Daily Flip podcast. If you want to check out the links to this podcast on the RSS feed, you can find them down in the description below that like and subscribe button. There's Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine. Also down there you can find the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post a Twitter tirade every Tuesday and Thursday. And if you stick around on this YouTube channel or the RSS feeds on Tuesday and Thursday, you'll also have the 6 and 6 episode. That is a international news segment, 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. So with that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.